If I had to pick any form of entertainment that has sucked away more hours of humanity than any other, and has thus held us back most as a species, I would have to pick the MMORPG. It was as I played the recently released RuneScape Mobile, because yes, I literally have no life, that this thought popped into my head, and I began imagining about what other MMORPGs on mobile could be like. Because again, I have no life. My thoughts immediately jumped to World of Warcraft, the big boy granddaddy of all modern day MMOs. And thankfully for us, the Google Play Store was more than happy to provide some alternatives. Welcome to Port Patrol, the show where I look at weird, interesting, or knockoff ports of video games, and today we are taking a look at mobile World of Warcraft ripoffs. Order and Chaos Online 3D MMORPG, good name guys, was released in 2011 and was developed by Gameloft, a game company whose entire library is filled with so many blatant ripoffs of already existing and much more popular games that if I were to tell you they were a Chinese developer, you would probably be very surprised to hear that they are actually French. Whether it be adapting the Halo series into Nova, Modern Warfare into Modern Combat, God of War into Hero of Sparta, Soul Calibur into Blades of Glory, Final Fantasy into Eternal Legacy, Diablo into Dungeon Hunter, Team Fortress into Blitz Brigade, Grand Theft Auto into Gangster, Red Dead Redemption into Six Guns, no matter what game you can think of, Gameloft has a mobile ripoff for you. I could make so many episodes of Port Patrol based on their games, and in all honesty, that's not a bad idea actually. So honestly, what better place to start with on our search for a mobile game to scratch that World of Warcraft itch than right here. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get much closer than this. Order and Chaos is about as blatant as a World of Warcraft clone as you can pretty much find anywhere. Starting with the character creation menu, we have your standard selection of human, elf, undead and orc, with elves having the added bonus of looking like either blood or knight variety. There's also the Mendel, which I guess are kinda like the Pandaren in that they're the neutral faction, but also act as the gnomes because they're small. Okay, that one's probably a bit of a stretch. Even the customization options are really similar, with hairstyles and face paints looking suspiciously similar to ones you can find in WoW. Classes are also pretty much carbon copies of existing WoW classes, with the Flame Knight probably being the closest thing to an original idea here, even if it is just this game's version of the Death Knight. I opted to go for an elf that definitely isn't supposed to look like a night elf, which landed me in the Arcadian Forest, an area that is definitely not at all inspired by Elwyn Forest as long as you ignore the fact it looks like it in every single way possible, right down to the thugs with red bandanas across their face. I mean, okay, whatever, right? You get the idea. It's World of Warcraft, and as fun as it would be to just list off every idea they stole from it, like the world design, the currency system, the abilities your character use, you could honestly go on forever. So let's instead look at how it plays, and you might be quite surprised to hear this, but it plays identically to World of Warcraft. I bet you didn't see that one coming. If you're down with typical MMO quests that simply involve killing a bunch of enemies, then in all honesty you'd be down for this. It never really does anything amazing or unexpected, but all things considered that really is to be expected, isn't it? Killing things feels good, gaining XP is satisfying, getting new armor is addicting, even if the game is like weirdly generous for a mobile game. You regularly get reward boxes which deck you out with loads of money and great armor. Honestly, probably a little bit too much, seeing that the first one you get at level 1 gives you a mount straight from the get-go. The armor you get also pretty much invalidates any you would get as quest rewards too, but I'd rather have a mobile game be too generous than not in this kind of thing, if you catch my drift. Of course, that may just be a trap to lure in new players. For all I know, once you get far enough in the game, it could be incredibly stingy, and it probably wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But for what it's worth, the part of the game I played seemed fun enough, but don't get me wrong, the game has its problems. Like many Gameloft games, it absolutely nails the core gameplay of the game they sought to rip off, but really has a lack of polish that lets it down in many places. The combat is serviceable, but it's hard to deny that many of the animations are really janky. Double tapping targets to loot or talk to them is very picky as to when it wants to work, and overall the UI could do with a serious overhaul. Whoever designed the storage box menu in this game should honestly be locked in a box and left to starve for all I care. It's so finicky, needing you to put items perfectly within the squares, that it makes managing the absolutely tiny inventory you have in this game somehow a much more ridiculously difficult task than it needs to be. But I guess they had to make one aspect of this game difficult, because it definitely isn't the gameplay. I guess just like the actual World of Warcraft, the questing in this game is incredibly easy, at least at the start it is. I was able to kill the majority of the enemies in this game before they took off a single bit of my health bar, and if you're playing the mage, then it isn't long before you get a spell that does a huge amount of damage that can hit multiple enemies at once, but barely uses any more MP than your regular spells. Your attacks are either useless or overpowered, there's no in between. But despite all this, I can't really say I didn't enjoy playing it. MMOs are inherently addictive by design, and as much as I hate to say it, despite how janky the game is, despite how much of a blatant rip-off it is, despite how much the warring factions it sells you on don't really mean anything at all, because when you're done with the Horde starting area, which definitely isn't meant to be Duratar, honest, it just teleports you to the Alliance area and you just do quests there now. Yeah, I don't know, it's a bit weird to be honest. For what it is, it being a mobile game, the game is tailored pretty well for being able to be played in very short chunks of time. A lot of the gripes I have with the game wouldn't really be annoying enough to stop me playing in like 30-minute chunks, which is really ideal for a game like this. Honestly, the only thing that stopped me from playing more was the awful performance. It could just be my phone, and looking at gameplay online, it probably is just my phone to be honest. But considering how this game looks, it runs dreadfully at times, becoming literally unplayable in certain areas. Trying to do a dungeon or any sort of PvP would be near on impossible for me in this state, but thankfully that isn't really a problem anymore, because the game is pretty much dead. If I'm being generous, I'd say I saw about 10 other people while playing this game. Not a deal breaker for me. I mean, I have no friends, so I play these games alone anyway, and honestly I think I'd rather die than try to chat to people while questing using a mobile keyboard, but it's worth bringing up just in case it matters to you. The simple fact is, the game is no longer really supported outside of small bug fixes. Gameloft and its player base have moved on to bigger and better things. Those bigger and better things being one bigger and better thing, and that bigger and better thing being this game's sequel. All you Order and Chaos fans better hold onto your butts, because Order and Chaos 2 is here, and it's bigger, better, and less World of Warcrafty than ever before. Which is something I really wish I knew before I named this video Mobile World of Warcraft ripoffs, but it's too late to back off now. This game bucks the trend of Order and Chaos 1, and indeed every Gameloft game ever made, by, not even joking here, being one of the most innovative and original MMOs I have ever played. Is not what I'm going to say about this game, because all they actually did was change from ripping off WoW to ripping off a weird mix of Final Fantasy XIV and Terra. Again, very unfortunate for the title of this video, but being a sequel to the first game means some elements of World of Warcraft were bound to slip over, thus meaning I am definitely completely justified in titling the video as I did, and am definitely not clickbaiting you. So once again we have the ever familiar selection of human, elf, orc, Mendel, and Kratan. The undead inexplicably being nuked off the face of the planet, just like all the customization options because there's like 3 of them. Funny that a game that so heavily rips off Final Fantasy XIV, which has one of the most robust and customizable character creators I've ever used in an MMO, has this as its character creation menu. But I won't digress. Honestly, I'm not at all sure why I thought this video was a good idea, trying to review 2 different MMOs that are meant to be enjoyed over tens of hundreds of hours in the space of 15 minutes, but I will try to do the best job I can. Which probably isn't much of a job at all. Really, there isn't too much to say about this game now that it isn't much of a World of Warcraft ripoff. But for what it's worth, it's probably better than the first one. The graphics have improved dramatically, and would probably improve even more if I wasn't so lazy and downloaded the high definition graphics pack. And the frame rate is also a lot more stable. Classes and combat have had a massive overhaul, with much more meteor feeling blows, enemy attacks you can actively dodge, and you yourself having to rapidly tap the screen to deal more damage. A small change, but tapping to attack instead of just auto-attacking just feels so much better. The UI is actually usable now, and the fact it shows your current quest on screen is a big bonus. And you can even tap on it for the game to automatically take you to your objective, you know, if you want to play the game but don't actually want to play the game. Quests are a lot more varied this time round, with similar Fate-styled quests like in Final Fantasy, in just about every way possible. Apart from initial customization, Order and Chaos 2 is a better game than the original. But despite that, it really doesn't hold my interest in the same way. I mean, don't get me wrong, most of that has to do with the fact the only reason I remotely cared about the first one was because it was funny to see how much it ripped off World of Warcraft. But even taking that into account, the new progression system in this game really bugs me. The amount of pay-to-win content is a massive turn-off for me, with like 3 different currencies in-game, and all of them having specific things you can buy with them. The only one you get real amounts of by playing the game, and not by using your wallet, is the gold. But it is incredibly stingy with this gold, not even giving you enough money to buy simple stuff like bread half the time. Compared to the first game where you're practically spewing gold out of every orifice before you've even tapped the first button, and it is a bit of a bummer. It is a shame then, because there is a lot of content here to like. There's loads of solo challenges, quests, dungeons, and raids. Basically everything you would expect from a full-sized MMO you could play on PC. So why wouldn't you just do that? Well, as it turns out, they did. Because Order and Chaos 2 also saw a release on the Windows Store, which, if you're a lucky American, or a weird Brit who changed his computer's region settings just to access the American Windows Store, you can still download and play. Yep, it certainly is a upscaled phone game. There is absolutely no reason to play this version, not only because you are playing it on a platform with real, actual MMOs you could play instead, but also because it has been abandoned and is several years out of date when compared to the mobile version, which, ironically enough, also seems to have been abandoned since around April. So all aboard the Order and Chaos 3 hype train, I guess. At the very least, being such a lazy upscale of the base mobile game, I was able to slip in the footage I captured from it in with the rest of the review, and I guarantee none of you even noticed. Or at least I really hope you didn't, because there's no way I'm going back to get more footage now. In the end then, I really don't know how to end this video, because I'm not really sure why you would want to play these games. I mean, sure, I played them, but at first it was just to marvel at what a blatant ripoff it was, which then turned into an obligation to capture footage for this video. I guess I can kinda see why you'd want to if you want to play an MMO on mobile. but I'm not really sure why you'd want to do that either. And even if you did, you should honestly just skip to RuneScape or something. And even if you just want these games to scratch that non-RuneScape, World of Warcraft-like MMO itch, then hey, you know, they're free. No harm done, right? Well, World of Warcraft is free up to level 20, Final Fantasy XIV is free up to level 35, Terra is completely free, and it isn't that hard to find vanilla servers for World of Warcraft you can play completely for free, forever. And that's plenty of time to scratch that itch, right? But if you really, really have to pick one, which you don't, but if you really have to pick one, I would say Order and Chaos 1 has an advantage due to its novelty factor and the fact it is easily enjoyable without having to spend real money. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm off to never make a video on an MMORPG ever again because my god, this entire video was a mistake.